Hi everybody, this is Beauty of Algebra, and today we're going to focus on a statistics concept called types of bias. So it's important to know the difference between a census and a random sampling. So a population is the amount of people that you're interested in surveying. A census is going to survey everybody in that entire population. Let me give you an example. So let's say our population of interest were the people of the United States of America. And we were interested in, let's say, maybe the question will say cat people versus dog people. So a census would go through every single person in the United States, and they would give them a survey, and they would say, are you a cat person or are you a dog person? It would collect the data, and it would draw conclusions on that data. It would go through every single person in the United States for a census. A random sampling, though, would take a random amount of people across the United States, a smaller group, and it would be representative for the entire population. Random sampling is more convenient and cost-effective than censuses. However, if it is not properly randomized, it could lead to forms of bias. And that's what we're going to talk about right here. After this, my warning, I just put a big warning here. Bias sampling ahead. Here's our bias types. 3 types of bias. Selection bias is where we exclude part of the population of interest. So let's say we just survey the east coast of the United States and we accidentally leave out the west coast. That would be a type of selection bias. A measurement bias refers to improperly calibrated equipment. So maybe your scale is off and you measure everything with your scale. It would be inaccurate. That's a measurement type of bias. And then a response bias. Let's say you have a very passionate surveyor and you're scared to reply a certain way, or if it sways the responses of the participants, that would be a type of response bias. Your response is going to be swayed due to the surveyor. A non-response bias is going to be different than a selection bias, and that's important. Non-response biases, the surveyor gets, like the survey, but they choose not to reply. Whereas selection bias, what we talked about at the top, just excludes them in the first place. Now, these 2 points right here, these are sampling methods and they are not bias methods. So these 2 sampling methods lead to those bias methods we just talked about in the past slide. Convenience sampling is something that's obviously convenient, like maybe the participants are right in front of you, but it's not representative of the entire population. For example, that I type below, we have Mr. Hank wants to know what the most popular college degree choice amongst graduating seniors is at his school. He gives a survey out to his AP statistics class to represent the entire graduating class. It is his class. However, his AP statistics class is not entirely representative of the entire school. Those in an AP class more likely want to get college credit and more likely be geared to college. And you might be leaving out some of the population that is not considering college at his school. Voluntary response sampling gives the option for the participant to reply or not. And those who are more passionate may sway and lead to biased results. So voluntary response sampling is a type of sampling method that can lead to biased results. So what I wanted to do is I just wanted to practice a few of these concepts, go over some of the definitions, and then I really just kind of go over these. So in this problem right here, we have to determine if this is going to be a random. If this, it's a little bit hard to read. It says we want to determine whether the following would best be answered using a sample or a population. So if we read the first one, letter A, it says, how do people in your class feel about a new movie? So the class is around 30 people, 30 students large. So it's not too large. So it'd be very easy and not very costly to go through each one. So you can take like a census. So I would say that for people in your class, I think that you can survey everybody in your class, and the population of interest would be your entire class. If your population is not that large, I would say that you can say that this one would be a population. Part B says, how do all people who go to the movies feel about a new movie? Now this is kind of a little bit different. There's so many people that go to the movies that it'd almost be impossible to survey every single person who goes to the movies. It would also be very costly to track them all down. So it'd be a little bit more convenient. I would actually say a lot more convenient to use a sample or smaller subgroup of people to survey those who feel about a new movie. Next one is part C. It says, is a manufacturer producing defective light bulbs? This, I would argue that you can have as a sample. So it depends also on the size of the company, but let's say this is a huge company. So if they're making thousands upon thousands of light bulbs, you might want to just take a group of 100 of them, or maybe 200 of them, and see how many out of the 100 are defective, yes or no. If it is a large percentage, that would mean that they're defective and they should change their product. But a sample would be more cost effective. Part D is kind of a funny one. It says, does the soup you're making have enough seasoning? I like to think of this, it's kind of a silly example, but the population of interest is the soup. If you're trying to determine if it has enough seasoning, you really want to take a sample of it. You don't want to gulp the whole thing down to determine if it has enough seasoning, yes or no. You just want to take maybe a spoonful, taste it, and so that you still have some soup left to eat or to put seasoning in later if you need it. Then last one, part E, it says, who are voters going to vote for in the next presidential election? So let's say that this is the actual voting process. When you're voting, you would want to make sure that everybody's vote counts, and that would refer to the population of interest. All right. Next part that we're going to go over. This is the very last thing. It says, explain why the following are biased. So we want to make sure that we explain why these are biased in the first place. So part A says, a survey is handed out by loud volunteers on a street corner. Some people are suspicious of the volunteers and they choose not to participate in the survey. So if I just underline, they choose not to participate in the survey, not participate is a form of non-response bias. So this is a form of non-response bias. Just because they're choosing not to participate, and they could be beneficial for the whole entire population. Another one that we have that someone might argue, I would even argue that this is a response bias. So reason why I'm going to say response bias is, let's say that they actually do choose to participate in the survey. If this surveyor is so passionate and he's yelling on the street corner, those that do choose to participate may feel scared and may respond differently, leading to a response sort of bias. Part B says students are asked by their teacher whether they cheated on a test. So the key thing is they're asked by their teacher. Students don't like to always admit that they cheated on a test, so this can also lead to a form of response bias. Part C says that fast food franchisors use a cluster survey. So you may wonder about a cluster survey to find out about an employer-employee relationship. So a cluster survey is based off location. So you may take surveys of certain neighborhoods. But the key thing is that you may be leaving out a certain population of interest. So maybe you took clusters of certain states, but left out others. This can lead to a form of selection bias, where you're selecting some of the population, but not others. And then part D says a surveyor asks the questions, are you in favor of holding the Olympics in Toronto, even though your taxes may increase? Some people may not like that last part, even though your taxes may increase, and it may lead them to respond in a different sort of way, leading to a response bias for this final answer. All right. Hopefully this video helped you out. Please, if you want to see more of my resources, please visit my website at www.beautyofelgebra.com, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you.